Why your brain hates being watched. You walk into a room and suddenly you feel it. The stares, the pressure, the invisible judgment. Nothing actually happens. But your brain acts like you're on trial. Why does being watched feel so uncomfortable? Here's what your ancient wiring has to say about that. The spotlight effect. You think everyone's looking. You walk into a room and suddenly feel like the air got heavier. You adjust your shirt, fix your posture, maybe try to look casual, but deep down you're convinced that everyone is looking at you. Judging. Noticing every small thing, your awkward steps, that weird hair strand, the way you're holding your phone like it's a security blanket. Except, they're not. Most people are too busy thinking about their own awkward steps, their own weird hair, and how they're holding their phones. But your brain didn't get the memo. It's convinced you're under a spotlight. This is called the spotlight effect. A glitch in your brain that makes you believe you're the main character in everyone else's story. And the problem, your body reacts accordingly. Heartbeat rises. Shoulders tense. Eyes scan for escape routes just in case you need to disappear. All of this over something as simple as existing in public. You think it's a personality flaw. You think you're just socially awkward. But actually, your brain is doing something it's been doing for thousands of years, protecting you. In ancient tribes, being noticed too much could be dangerous. If you stood out, you were a target for predators, for conflict, or for rejection. Fitting in meant survival. Going unnoticed meant safety. So now when you walk into a coffee shop and think they're all looking at me, your brain isn't lying. It's just remembering a world that no longer exists. The glitch is that your nervous system still thinks it's a saber-toothed tiger world out there. That being judged equals being in danger. It doesn't know the difference between a curious glance and a death sentence. And here's where it gets weirder. The more self-aware you are, the worse it gets. Intelligent, sensitive people often overanalyze social cues, tone, and micro-expressions. You're not imagining things, you're just too good at detecting them. The problem is your brain turns those tiny signals into exaggerated threats. You think someone's looking at you weird? Maybe they are. Maybe they're just zoning out. But your brain says they hate you. You said something wrong. Leave now. And you believe it. The spotlight effect traps you in a loop where you assume everyone sees your flaws, but forgets they're too focused on hiding their own. In truth, everyone's too busy surviving their own internal monologue to truly care about yours. But your ancient brain hasn't caught up to that. So the next time you feel watched, remember it's just a reflex. A leftover instinct. You're not being judged, you're just being human. And that spotlight, most of the time, it's not even turned on. Evolution taught you eyes, ipshi danger. You feel a pair of eyes on you. You're not even doing anything wrong. Maybe you're just walking or eating or sitting alone at a party. But your body reacts like you've been caught doing something illegal. Muscles tense, mind races, stomach turns. All because someone looked in your direction. Seems irrational, right? But not to your ancient brain. In the world it remembers, being watched wasn't just uncomfortable. It meant danger. To early humans, being the center of attention often came right before something bad. A predator locking onto you. A tribe deciding you don't belong. Being noticed wasn't flattering. It was threatening. Because standing out meant standing alone. And alone meant dead. So now, thousands of years later, your nervous system still responds to eye contact like it's a sniper laser. It doesn't understand the difference between a tiger in the bushes and a coworker across the conference room. Both feel equally hostile. That's why even neutral attention can feel like pressure. Why a stranger staring can ruin your day. Why you'd rather stare at your phone than look up and make eye contact. It's not because you're shy. It's because your body thinks it's protecting you. And it kind of is. Our ancestors who reacted strongly to being watched, they survived. They got out of danger before it became deadly. Their jumpiness got passed on. Now you have it. Only today the threats are gone. But the response is still running. You're not in a jungle. You're not in exile. But your brain can't tell the difference. The survival code is still in there, firing up every time someone looks too long. That's why being watched in a Zoom call feels so draining. Why walking past a group of strangers feels like a performance. Your brain is acting like the tribe is deciding whether to keep you around. Social approval once meant food safety, belonging. Disapproval, exile. So when someone gives you a weird look, your heart drops. Not because you're dramatic, because your biology still equates rejection with death. And we wonder why eye contact is awkward. It's not awkward. It's ancient. Eye contact is loaded. It's primal. It's vulnerability and threat in a single glance. So if you flinch when people stare, it's not social anxiety, it's survival instinct misfiring. You're not fragile. You're just wired for a world that no longer exists. But here's the thing. Being seen now doesn't mean you're unsafe. It might mean you're being noticed, maybe even appreciated. Your job isn't to shut it down. Just to notice the reaction, breathe through it, and remind yourself you're not prey anymore. You're a person, and not every stare is out to eat you. Social surveillance and self-consciousness. You're not just being watched anymore. You're being perceived, rated, filtered, compared. That's the curse of living in the surveillance age, not by cameras but by eyes, real and imagined. In the past, being seen happened in real time. It ended when you walked away. But now, you're never off the stage. There's a digital version of you that exists 24/7, silently performing even when you're asleep. And your brain knows it. That old tribal alarm system is still running in the background, but now it's dealing with likes, views, comments, and reactions. You post something. You wait. Even if you pretend not to care, your body knows you're waiting. Because somewhere deep down, every like feels like acceptance. Every silence feels like exile. Modern life has turned perception into performance. Not just online, but in real life too. You don't just walk into a room, you enter it already scanning how you're being received. What are they thinking? Do I look confident enough? Am I talking too much? Too little? You don't relax, you audit yourself. Every glance becomes feedback. Every silence becomes overthinking fuel. You're not being paranoid. You're being adaptive. Because your brain assumes that being observed means you're being evaluated. It still thinks you're trying to stay in the tribe, and every social interaction is part of the test. So you begin to curate yourself. You speak in safe sentences. You smile at the right time. You mirror others' energy to avoid friction. And somewhere along the way, you forget what it's like to act without analyzing. Even being authentic feels rehearsed. That's the cost of constant social surveillance. You start performing your personality. You play the role of low-maintenance funny put together. Not because you're fake, but because you've learned that being real might be risky. So now you edit, you monitor, you tweak. Not out of vanity, but survival. Your ancient brain just wants to make sure you're accepted. And in this era, acceptance looks like attention, validation, praise. So when you don't get it, your nervous system sounds the alarm. Something must be wrong. You must have said something weird. You must have looked awkward. Better stay quiet next time. Better shrink. This is how hyper-self-awareness forms. You live life like you're under review. But the truth is, most people aren't thinking about you that much. They're too busy analyzing themselves. The spotlight is shared and usually dimmer than you think. The trick isn't to become invisible. It's to become okay with being seen even when you're not performing, even when you're imperfect, even when no one claps. Because being watched doesn't have to mean being judged. Sometimes, it just means you're there, and that's enough. What happens when you're always performing? You smile at the right time. You laugh on cue. You nod when you're supposed to and say I'm good before anyone even finishes asking. You're not lying, not exactly. You're just performing, all the time. And the worst part, you're so used to it that you barely notice it anymore. You've worn the mask so long it started to feel like your face. But deep down something's off. You feel tired in rooms full of people. You feel invisible when you're surrounded by friends. You leave conversations and replay every sentence in your head like you're editing a podcast that no one asked you to record. This isn't social anxiety. This is self-erasure. When you're always performing, you lose the thread of who you actually are. You become a mirror, a chameleon, whatever the room needs you to be. And slowly you stop asking what you need, what you feel, what you want. Because being real started to feel risky. You worry that if you stop performing, if you show up raw, awkward, messy, you'll be rejected, or worse, misunderstood. So you stick to the script, the put-together version, the easy-to-be-around version, the one that doesn't make anyone uncomfortable even if it's killing you a little inside. And what's the cost of that emotional fatigue, chronic tension, that feeling of being full of people but empty of yourself? When you live on stage, even silence feels like work. You rehearse every word, calculate every tone, anticipate every reaction, and it never stops. Because there's always another conversation, another meeting, another moment where you have to show up and be fine. So you smile, you nod, you disappear behind the image. But your body keeps the score. You get tired but can't sleep. You get praised but feel nothing. You get invited but start declining, not because you don't care, but because you're too tired to perform again. That's when it hits you. No one really knows you. They know the version you built to survive. And now that version has trapped you. But here's the truth. Most people won't say out loud, authenticity is risky, but being fake is exhausting. Constant performance is not a sustainable way to live. At some point, the mask will get too heavy. At some point, you'll crave connection more than approval. At some point, you'll want to be seen for real, not applauded, just accepted. And when that moment comes, you'll have to make a choice, keep performing, or step off the stage. Not because you failed at pretending, but because you finally remembered you're not here to be a role. You're here to be human. Your brain doesn't hate being watched. It fears what being watched used to mean. You're not paranoid. You're just carrying instincts older than your calendar. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen anyway.